Hey guys, it's Bina, and I finally decided on my version of Explosive Shot Deadeye that I want to play, and this is going to be an Avatar of Fire, but with a twist, we are going to be using the 3 Dragons Helm with Shock Burst rounds. So what does this mean? It means that we have got much better single target, which will consume also much less mana, because Shock Burst round is essentially you don't reload very often, you just spam the entire clip on the boss, and it just feels very good. Another thing that I changed, it's massive AoE. I'm going for extreme AoE because I want to have as much clear as possible. I figured that in the end game, during breaches and during delirium and like in many situations where you're overwhelmed by monsters, you want to have as much AoE as possible to clear as much of the screen as possible. That is a very, very good defensive option, as well as having the knockback on Explosive Shot. So that is what I'm going for. The reason why I'm going Avatar of Fire, so what does Avatar of Fire do? It converts 75% of your damage to fire. What this means is that Explosive Shot will be 100% of its damage will be fire. You're not losing anything. But Shock Burst round, since it is a lightning skill and it doesn't convert any of its damage to fire, you will lose 25% of Shock Burst round's damage. It's not a very big deal in my opinion. It is not a super high price to pay for having a very good clear even against the toughest monsters. What I mean by this is that monsters which do not have any resistances are super easy to kill no matter what you do. When you will have trouble, it is going to be against monsters that have medium to very high resistances to fire. And so if you keep Explosive Shot mixed between Fizz and Fire, and then you go Shock Burst round as well, and then Shock Burst round is lightning, you will have a much harder time trying to scale armor breaking, fire penetration, lightning penetration, exposure, lowering the res to fire and lightning. It is just going to be more of a pain in the ass to scale your damage properly. So I've decided to go full Avatar of Fire without the hammer shenanigans. You could certainly add hammer as well here, Hammer of the Gods on a weapon swap, but I ended up feeling that it was too clunky, and I prefer keeping the theme, and also like it's just smoother to play with Shock Burst rounds. With the buffs today, I might be adding some new skills as well in the future, but for now it is going to be purely Explosive Shot for clear and Shock Burst rounds for single target. So with this, with Avatar Fire, we are enabling 100% Explosive Shot damage to fire. So we're going to get very high penetration on top of exposure. You are aiming to get 75% to be able to get monsters to at least 0% res, even when they have a lot of extra resistances. So for example, certain bosses, you might see an icon under their health bar where it is a little fire icon, whether it is gray or it is golden. When it is golden, it means that he has a lot of resistances. So certain monsters, certain bosses will have up to 75% res. I'm not sure if they can go higher than this. I think there's a modifier that can increase their resistances. But anyways, the matter of the fact is that you will have enough penetration and lowering the res to get them to at least 0%, where you will be able to deal your full damage no matter what. So the tough monsters are becoming easier, and the easy monsters are just easy, right? So that's the main idea of the build. So here we are over on Maxroll. I've done the entire build for you guys. So this planner is going to be available down in the description and probably in the comments as well. You can just go over here and look for all of the gems that I'm using and all of the gear that I'm recommending. Also the passive tree is also here, but I'll go over it in game right now. So here we are in game, and then you can browse Maxroll planner at your leisure. Explosive Shot. So this is our main clear ability. Scatter Shot, just gonna be enable us to fire more projectiles. My idea with Scatter Shot is to kill packs in one shot. So I'm trying to get as much damage with one shot. One change from my previous videos, you can see I've changed martial tempo. It's no longer an Explosive Shot. And the reason why is I also have auto reload on here, so I don't really need to have any extra attack speed or extra reload speed, because I'm just never reloading with auto reload. Heavy stunning an enemy will automatically reload Explosive Shot. But while mapping, we are pretty much always stunning enemies. Small monsters are very, very easy to stun. I've also added quite a few gems not gems, but I've also added quite a few jewels with stun buildup, area of effect, attack damage. So stun has a very nice synergy alongside auto reload, which enables us to basically never reload while mapping. This just make for a very smooth experience and a consistent damage output and a consistent cadence of your explosive shots, which just feels very good in general. So that's why I moved this to martial tempo, because I wanted to have my single target be more into shock burst rounds, so as much DPS as possible here. So yeah, that's the interaction with auto reload. Next up, we have magnified effect. Magnified effect is my new favorite now. So as you can see now, with my jewels and with magnified effect, alongside my passive tree, I have a lot of AoE. So AoE is extremely good, not only offensively, like it hits more targets, but defensively, you're killing more targets quicker, and then they also get knocked back. And yeah, it's just really good. I would never go without this again. I just Breach were I know today there has been a patch with for Breach which lowers the density of monsters, but even then I feel like when there's a lot of density, you want as much AoE as possible, so that's why we go magnified effect. Fire infusion, just more damage. Heft, just more damage as well. We are kind of like running low on damage gems, so I put Heft here. It does increase our damage quite significantly. Next up, we have shock burst rounds. Shock burst rounds, I am using concentrated effect, so we're trying to get as much single target as possible on this. So conk effect will increase the damage of the pulse, so the pulse damage is going to be much bigger than the projectile, so that's why we're trying to scale this as much as possible, and 40% is a huge multiplier. So conk effect for 40% more area damage, primal armament, more damage as well, martial tempo, more attack speed, rising tempest, more damage for each skill used recently of a different elemental type. So this one is very interesting because people think that this might only be for the 2 different types that you're using, but it actually counts the type of damage, like all 3 elemental types, even the type that you are using on your actual skill. So if I go and I just use shock burst rounds, if I start shooting, well, now you don't see with tailwind. If I use shock burst rounds, I have full seconds of tailwind and I start shooting. As you can see, my damage goes up. So it counts the same element type that the attack that you're using. So it's always 12%, but as soon, like, if you use explosive shot right before and then you swap, then it's 24%. And then if you use something like Hellstorm, which is some other thing that I'm testing with, I'm not going to talk about this today, but yeah, this could be potentially 36% more LA damage for each skill used recently. So that's going to be really nice. As I said, we're kind of lacking a lot of gems to increase our damage because all of our damage is fire, and we don't want to use gems that increase, for example, lightning damage and reduces cold and fire. So yeah, I'm going for Rising Tempest here. Elemental Focus, again, 25% more damage, always nice. Not gonna talk about Hellstorm round, doing some testing with this. Oil Grenade, basically payload. We're using Oil Grenade to get as much exposure as possible. So we do have some exposure on our tree with hits that heavy stun inflict fire exposure, but against certain bosses, you won't always have this. So unless you were going with a unique amulet that has enemies in your presence have fire exposure, which is another thing that I might consider in the future with this build. But cheap way to do it: Oil Grenade, payload, strip away, and long fuse. So it lasts longer, increased effect, and might proc a second time. So what you're doing with this is that you're throwing out your grenade, you're shooting it anyways with explosive shot, which will detonate in a huge area, and that's going to be your exposure. Emergency reload, essentially just a more multiplier of damage as well. So when I'm doing my rotation, I'm going to be shooting Oil Grenade, I'm going to be using Infernal Cry, I'm going to shoot, and then hopefully shoot a few times. The boss gets shocked, the boss will get stunned as well. I will swap to Shock Burst round and then use Emergency Reload and shoot right away, right? Emergency Reload will give me a bunch of buffs, which is going to be 30% more damage with the bolts by default, and then you can increase it even further, 15% more cooldown recovery rate, and then more skill effect duration. So it's just more damage, also reloads instantly. Infernal Cry, I am using this mainly for days, There is Raging Cry. I was using this mainly with my hammer setup. I kept it here. I might also add a Ballista here with Font of Rage, like just for the start of fights. I mean, I will not be casting Ballistas during fights, during boss fights, but for the start of a fight, if I can set up a Ballista and just use an Infernal Cry, instantly daze and stun, and get the Rage bonus from this. So I'll get 4 Rage per 5 power of counted enemies in range. Bosses, unique bosses always have 20 power, so that's going to be quite a bit of a rage. As well, with Font of Rage on my Ballista, I'll be able to regen, to generate some rage for an even bigger multiplier of damage. So my start of a boss fight will have a bigger burst. So that is why I'm using this, and skills have less cost just because, you know, why not reduce the amount of cost of this. So this I'm gonna not gonna talk about this one because I'm doing some testing as well. But attrition, very important. You have Culling Strikes against rare and unique enemies that have been in your presence for a total of at least 33 seconds. So, and on top of this, you get a more damage multiplier stacking the longer you fight the boss. So against fight that extend in an extended duration, this is going to be very, very good, and it's going to increase your damage significantly, as well as giving you Culling Strike. Wind Dancer, very defensive. So this synergizes very well with Tailwind. Tailwind is another really, really good buff, which gives us movement speed, skill speed, evasion rating. So we don't want to lose this because we lose it when we get hit. And so evasion rating, Wind Dancer will give us more evasion rating per stage. And when we are hit by a melee attack, we lose all of our stages. So yeah, we're going Wind Dancer. We are going also Cannibalism. So this one is a must-have in the build. It is your main form of sustain in maps. You are just blasting the entire screen. Monsters are constantly dying, and instead of like having to look at your life all the time and like grabbing potions, use your potions in emergency situations, and then let Cannibalism carry you. 4% of life recovered on kill. This is like, it is so OP. You have no, like, I thought they made an error, which this should have been 0.4% when I read it. But yeah, 4%, crazy amount. Basically tops you off all the time in maps. If you have more spirit, I'm also using Clarity and also Herbalism. But feel free to experiment with more if you have like more spirit to mess around with. But more mana regen against extended fight again might be nice. And then recovery from Life Flask, also kind of nice. I don't have enough for the 1% regen. There's another one for 1% regen, but I'm not using it right now. So that is pretty much my setup here. I'm gonna go over the gear that I have currently. On your crossbow, you're looking to have like big physical damage. You care and you don't really care about the additional bolt. Ideally, yes, you want to have an additional bolt, but especially with the setup with auto reload, you could not have an additional bolt and you would not be reloading all the time because you would be getting constant reloads while mapping. And so this would feel good even without the additional bolt. But technically, you would like to have additional bolts. You would want to have a big physical damage roll. So percentage fizz, hybrid fizz, and flat fizz, level of projectile skills, attack speed, and on the suffix, you can also have an extra additional bolt as well. So not expert dryad is not the expert dyad is not the best base. Forlorn crossbow would be the best. But yeah, use what you can. Try to get as much fizz damage as possible, and consider the level of projectile skills, which increases your explosive shots damage and shock burst rounds as well. 3 dragons. So basically what this is that it will let our fire damage contribute to shock chance, and then shock burst round cannot ignite by itself, right? It has this here, somewhere here. Oh. Cannot inflict shock, and then the pulse also cannot inflict shock either. So 3 Dragon's Mask enables shock burst rounds by using explosive shot. This is a very nice unique with elemental res, and it just enables the build, right? So you must have 3 dragons if you plan on playing shock burst rounds, because if not, explosive shot will not shock. On my pieces of armors, I'm looking for armor and evasion rating bases, so I'm going hybrid evasion and armor. I still want to try to scale my fizz mitigation as much as I can. It's not very high right now. My gear is not very good, but keep in mind this with Tailwind and with also the Wind Dancer, it's gonna get much higher. But I'm going for life, resistances. If you can get stats on this, like attributes is very, very nice as well. Go for whatever you can get. But life, I would recommend on every single piece of gear. Life, resist, attributes on rings. If you can get damage, even better. This one is actually quite bad, but I will replace it. Another one that I want to talk about is going to be Death Rush. So I love this while mapping, especially after the changes that they did, which they gave us back some resists from the end game, which we were losing at, I don't remember what exact levels of Waystones. But now that we got some more, Death Rush is very, very good while mapping. Onslaught is a crazy buff, which gives you 20% skill speed and 10 movement speed. As I said earlier in my previous videos, movement speed is absolute king in this game since we have so little of it. And we also have increased skill speed, which also increases all of our actions scales with stacks with attack speed, right? So very, very good. Also has evasion rating. Just a good item in general. If you don't have this one, it doesn't matter. Just use a regular ring. It's going to be easier to cap your res. But if you have it, I strongly recommend it. I think it's very, very nice. It makes the build feel very, very smooth. Amulet. One thing that you want to go for here is going to be Spirit, either on the implicit or the explicit. Unless you manage to get a Val implicit here for like extra Spirit. Don't think that you want to go for it on your body armor. Body armor, you would really want to get as much armor and evasion as possible and life as your prefixes. So don't really recommend it on the body armor, but on the amulet might be nice. Try to get spirit, life, resistances, attributes, same old stuff, right? Attributes just enough to like get all of your skills enabled, and then try to stack as much strength as possible to scale your life even further for your tankiness. For the gloves, I'm going for the same thing. It's going to be life, resist, attributes, damage. Try to cap your res. Boots is going to be movement speed, absolute priority. At the very minimum 30, but I would even recommend 35. I'm a sucker for movement speed. I just love movement speed. And in any game that does not have a lot, it's just even better. So movement speed is king. Then life, resist, attributes, same old thing. Same here. They made the wait, how many? Wait, what is this belt actually? I need to slam this belt. On the belt, ideally, you're also going for life, resist, all the good stuff. You can get some more charms here. If you can, it's nice. If you don't have it, doesn't really matter. Mapping feels fine even without 3 charms. But yeah, ideally, I would like to have more charms. So nothing too special on gear that I have, and I'm having a blast. I'm farming tier 15s. I'm not sustaining maps, so like with the latest patch, maybe we will be sustaining maps. Now if I go over the passive tree, so again, you grab Gathering Wind for Tailwind, you grab Point Blank and Endless Munitions. Point Blank, you know, you could go for a Far Shot as well, but I feel like when you're mapping, it's much easier to have the monsters come at you and just like shoot them in the face, and you know, have more damage when you are in more danger. Because when you're far away, you are not in as much danger as when monsters are very close to you, right? So that is why Point Blank, Endless Munition, additional projectile. It's actually nice. Also with Oil Grenade, will cover more area. Also adds another projectile to shock burst rounds. It is not technically double damage because it actually slows your attacks, but you know, it's a fair multiplier, but it's not doubling your damage with shock burst rounds. Okay, let's just keep this in mind. So what I'm doing here is I'm padding here for the movement speed. As I said, I always prioritize movement speed. These nodes have stun buildup, reduced attack speed, which is not nice, but a big projectile damage. So I still take this little cluster here for projectile damage as well. But yeah, when we have POB, maybe I rethink all of these, some of these choices. But for now, I think it's nice. It synergizes with the build, with stun buildup as well, enabling also our auto reload on explosive shot. So that one is very, very nice. Then we're padding through here, just projectile damage. We're going to two-handed damage. So this is just like very nice nodes as well with damage, strength, dexterity, area of effect. Huge. We're padding through the movement speed nodes, grabbing the crossbow reload speed, because, you know, when we reload, this node is just like too efficient. 40%, 15. These nodes are just too good. Padding towards here, with increased chance to shock, which is the most important one that we're going for. And then we go for attack damage penetrates 15% of enemy elemental res. So as I said before, you want to have your total of penetration, exposure, and everything to be at least 75% to be able to deal with any monsters as easily as any other trash monsters that you just encounter, right? So we don't want to make any monsters very hard. So that is why we're going with here with 15% penetration. Yes, penetration only goes to 0 and it doesn't bring the resistances lower, but just making those hard monsters easy is a bigger step than making the easy monsters even easier by lowering the res, right? How this is calculated, apparently, I have not seen any concrete research or information about this, but what it is on Wiki is that penetration applies after the exposure. So you lower the res and then you get penetration. So if you can't lower them below, you're only lowering them to 0. So that is why I'm just gonna go for 0 res. Eventually, we might figure out some other way to deal with this and bring their resistances down even further. But for now, I am going for 75% penetration and exposure lower res. Now with exploit, increased duration of ignite, shock, and chill, and also increased damage that hits against shocked enemies. Shocked elemental elements. So that includes shock. Very good note here. One thing that you might notice, I'm going for a lot of sockets. So jewels are very, very strong. You get a lot of good stats. You can get like double attack stats, like for example, increase attack damage, increase fire damage, increase elemental damage. You can get like area of effect, stun buildup, fire penetration. There's just a multitude of stats that are just extremely good that you can go for. You can go for extra LA res. You can go for either it is defensive or offensive. What I am going for here though is a lot of area of effect with as much damage as possible. So I'm going for area of effect pretty much on every single one of those to get that huge, well, that's not huge, but to get this huge AoE with magnified effect. So that is my plan. It worked out really well. My survivability in maps, in high density maps, went up like crazy as soon as I had more area of effect. Then we have this one here, 5% of fizz damage taken as a random element. Very, very good for defense. I am padding down here. You can see my points in here. It's just because my gear doesn't have enough attributes. Basically, this is like a temporary solution to my lack of attributes, but I would like to remove this. Going for attack speed here. Going for these nodes for the crossbow chance to not consume a bolt, as well as damage with crossbows. And the reload speed are just like a very, very good nodes if you're using crossbows. Then here against rare or unique enemies, there are some very nice nodes. You could also path towards the attack damage, attack speed as well, while a rare or unique enemy is in your presence. But for me, I just decided to go with these nodes for the points that I have. Another socket over there, grabbing the area of effect for attacks here. Again, I think area is king. Then I'm pathing through here for 2 points. I'm getting another socket, so this is very, very good. Penetration as well. We're pathing here. And some very nice nodes that you could get would be those extra maximum LA res. This is what I plan to get in the future, but right now I just want to increase my damage even further. Another socket, Avatar Fire, converts 75% of damage to fire damage, and you deal no non-fire damage. This is why I was saying that you lose 25% of your shock burst round damage, but this is like equal to like losing one socket. So it's like, not socket, but the one link. So going from a 6 link to a 5 link, I mean, it's 25% damage, right? You can decide if you want to use it or not, but this version of the build, I think it's just great because this enables you to just scale fire penetration and exposure and just not have to deal with any shenanigans of breaking armor, lowering fire res, lowering lightning res. It's just more streamlined, straightforward, and the scaling feels better. Penetration hits that heavy stun inflict fire exposure, so this will apply exposure on any rares in your maps that you encounter, because you will stun them very, very easily. Yeah, this is just very nice automated exposure. Again, if you have the amulet. I don't remember the name of the amulet, but there's one that gives you enemies in your presence are have fire exposure. You would not need to grab this because they would always have it, and it will also apply against bosses. But with this starter version, we are using overheating blows. So I think this pretty much sums up what I wanted to say about this build. It's very good. It's very smooth. It's easy to play. You can get into it very, very easily. It's not very expensive. You don't need anything special. All of your damage pretty much comes from a crossbow. Get a good crossbow, get a good 3 Dragons Mask, and start blasting. Alright, guys, hope you enjoyed the video. I'll have some more updates in the future, but that pretty much covers the version I decided to go for on Explosive Shot Deadeye. Avatar Fire, very good. So that covers it. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys all in the next one.